Hi there. I'm Laura, and you're listening to Blooming with myself, Laura the Lesbian. This is episode 4, which I'm calling Leaving Mormonism and Leaving My Marriage. This podcast explores my story of discovering that I was gay at the age of 46 after coming out of a controlling religion. The podcast is for any late blooming lesbian or queer person, also their spouses, family, and anyone seeking better understanding of themselves and humanity. It's also for any former Mormon seeking stories to help them heal from their religious trauma. Lastly, this podcast is meant to be heard sequentially. So if you are discovering this somewhere in the middle, go back and listen to the early episodes. Okay, before I start this section of today's story, I want to go back and talk to you a little bit about what I am hearing from my listeners. I've had this TikTok channel, and then of course now the podcast too, for less than 2 months. And I have a lot of people reaching out to me. I have been shocked at how it's every day someone writes to me, at least one person. And from a lot of times what I hear is, your story is so inspiring because I am so afraid to come out. And interestingly, the thing that they're afraid of with coming out isn't that people will be grossed out or weirded out by the fact that they're lesbian. They're worried about hurting the people that they love. And this gets to a problem that I have discussed with people in my life who I respect and love. And that is that compulsory heterosexuality, or that concept that women especially are taught that they are supposed to get married to a man and have children with the man because that serves patriarchy. This concept that we stop women from being able to think about what they like, it hurts the straight people too. Because I'm going to tell you, it's not my fault. It's not any of our faults. But when we come out, we are changing the lives of the people around us, aren't we? And as women, we're taught that we're supposed to make people around us happy and feel good. And so this is a common thread that I hear from many of us. We're good with the fact that we're lesbians, but we just don't want to hurt anybody. And what I want to tell you what my coach told me, which was that you came into this marriage with good intentions and with love for the person that you married. You did not know, a late blooming lesbian does not realize she is gay until after she has set her life up. I had no clue. I was completely clueless. I was so wrapped up in what I've called in previous episodes, the male gaze, Gaze. I wanted so badly to be loved and admired by men that I never once thought about what I liked. Okay, so going back to this not wanting to hurt people, ladies, what if not coming out hurts your loved ones more? What if it's better for everybody for you to just be your true, authentic self? I truly believe that that's the case. And I'm here for you if you want to write to me, and I will, I'll do my best to respond, or I might respond in the podcast, because I get messages every day, so I can't write everybody back. But back to the topic at hand. Remember, today is leaving Mormonism and leaving my marriage. So what I want to start with in this episode is a list of reasons why I didn't see for many years that my first marriage was in the shitter. It was in the shitter from the very beginning, and it stayed in the shitter until the very end. Although in our defense, I would say we had a fairly amicable divorce, at least at first we did. Once we got new partners, it was terrible. But these are reasons why I didn't see that it was indeed in the shitter. First of all, I got taught in my church, of course, this has to do with church, right? I got taught in my church that marriage is hard work. And I heard that phrase, hard work, and I thought that my kitty's trying to come up here with me. You can't come up here, kitty. Sorry. Hopefully he doesn't start purring because he is a loud purrer. Anyway, I heard that phrase, hard work, and that's what I thought we were doing. Like literally, when we would fight, when we would argue about stuff, we didn't see eye to eye on anything. We were poor. There he goes. He's purring. I'll be back. Let me pause this. Okay, sorry about that. Kitty's out of the room now. As much as he wants to snuggle, we can't have him purring over the sound of my podcast. Okay, so marriage is hard work. And I thought that arguing all the time meant hard work. Another problem was that my parents did not have an amicable relationship. Later on, I would say that they fell in love again, but while I was growing up, they only talked to decide who was going to pick up who and what was for dinner. So I didn't have an example of two people working together on anything but a crisis or an inconvenience. And then again, going back to the church, the Mormon church, they taught that the framework of what they call the gospel, which is basically like the rules and the dogma that they teach, the gospel was the framework, is all that you needed to have a happy marriage. So as long as we were checking our boxes, we just believed we were doing fine. And I didn't recognize the bad habits and the interactions because I would just go through in my mind if we were doing the following things: reading Mormon scripture together, praying together, praying by myself, going to church, having a temple recommend, which is a little piece of paper where you and two of your man leaders, they call them priesthood leaders, agree that you are quote unquote worthy to enter the temple, which is the more sacred of the two types of buildings. So everyone's got a little calling card in their wallet that you have to earn by praying and paying and obeying and doing all the things you're supposed to. So if we both have a temple recommend, that's another outer sign that things are good with our marriage. Doing our church assignments. So we have little things called callings where, maybe we're in charge of the youth group for the girls or the boys, or we're supposed to teach a class on Sundays or lead the music on Sundays. So those are our callings. And then having family home evening, which is like a family worship service once a week. Now, all these, that's not even all the boxes. There's so many boxes that you can check off in Mormonism. In fact, I almost wonder if it's a little bit insidious, a little bit on purpose. If you keep people so busy practicing this high demand religion, then you don't have time to doubt it. You don't have time to question what's happening and what you want to do because you're so busy doing what you should do so that you can feel happy. And I say happy in air quotes too. And I want to point out too that even if I had recognized that it was a bad marriage, I don't think that I would have left. Because again, I was so afraid of being alone. Okay, yeah, the sex wasn't good, which I'm going to get to in a second, but is shitty sex better than no sex? I mean, at least I had the possibility that maybe it was going to get good, which makes me laugh now thinking about. I really did want to have good sex. I really, really did. And I would try, I would read books and stuff, try different things. I never got good. We were not compatible. We should have known that before we got married, right? Before we entered into legal agreements and made babies with each other. But the Mormon framework didn't make space for that. All right. Now I have another list for you. This list is things that I should have seen that would have told me that our marriage actually was terrible. First of all, we were ill prepared to provide for our family. We were broke. And we had two small children. We had those children anyway, because we were taught that that's what you were supposed to do. And we argued all the time, even about small things. And I remember near the end, we would commute together, me to school and him to work, because we were down a car. And we would just spend that 30 minutes in the car, just arguing and crying. We didn't see eye to eye on how to raise children at all. I will say, and I don't want this to become an ex-husband bashing episode. We're not well suited for each other. And he was not all bad. For example, he helped me with the kids more than your typical Mormon husband. And he didn't say no when I asked if I could get more schooling, despite it being that cultural no-no that we talked about. So that was good. And I had this insomnia problem where once I wake up, I still have this problem. Once I wake up in the middle of the night, it's going to be a couple hours before I can fall back to sleep. And so he would get the baby and bring the baby to me, and I would nurse the baby, and then he would change the baby's diaper and put the baby back in bed. He was a hands-on dad. He was not bad. We just didn't get along. And there was this thing where he didn't feel, I think, very powerful as a person. And so when we argued, I believe that it made him feel powerful to just make me feel really, really bad. I didn't even know until later when I had disagreements in healthier relationships that you could have a disagreement where you didn't have to walk away feeling like crap about yourself. This is just, we were so young and inexperienced and so clueless about how to have a good marriage. And it was terrible. It was miserable. One of the things that we did, and this is on my list too, is we were always digging up bones. Nothing in our marriage was ever completely forgiven. You could dig it up anytime you needed to as a weapon in something that you were trying to get the other person to do. But like I said, I was afraid that if we got divorced, I would be alone. I mean, if you think it's hard for an old maid in Mormonism to get divorced, how about, not divorced, to get married and find a man? How about a divorced woman, a mother of 3 who is also a dentist? Like, that's like so many red scarlet letters on your chest. I knew that as a Mormon, I probably wouldn't get remarried. And then who was going to have sex with me? I know I always say that, but like literally that was one of my thought habits that I was always worried about. Okay, so back to Mormonism, back to my dental school. What's interesting about being in dental school was that it was the first time in a long time that I spent very much time not in a Mormon setting, even though here I was in Iowa. As a missionary, it was 100% Mormon. And then as a stay-at-home mom, it was home and church, home and church. But then when I went to dental school, it was 8 to 9 hours a day in a non-religious setting. And what I found out was that I started being seen as me, Laura. And I had certain traits that were known within the class. Everybody knew that if there was something that the lecturer was not making clear, Laura was the girl who was going to raise her hand and ask for clarification. And other things, I got known for certain things that were unique to me as a person. But then when I would go to church, I noticed that I was seen first as a woman and second as Laura. For example, when we moved into a new congregation and we were like, hi, we're the so-and-sos and we're here for dental school, and talking to another mom, maybe the mom might say, oh, what year is your husband? And I'd say, oh, no, I'm the one in dental school. And then she would say, oh, well, are you going to be a hygienist? And like, it would take 3 or 4 tries before their brain would be able to accept that I, as a woman and a mom, was going to be the doctor of dental surgery in the family and not my husband. Another thing would be just, we moved into that new congregation. I was really looking forward to getting to know everyone, making some new Mormon friends. But as soon as I moved in, they assigned me to the nursery. So while everybody else was talking to each other, I was in basically the daycare room with other women taking care of everybody else's children while they did church. They didn't ask men to do that. It was just the women. And I really could have been utilized as a teacher or in music or something, but that's where they put me. And I just was another example of how, gosh, this isn't really my strength. in dental school, people see me as me, but here I'm a woman first. And I didn't really like that. And the feminist in me started really waking up during those years, while when I was really seeing that things were not exactly fair between the men and the women, and the men were always the ones in charge. And where were my professional women peers? I wanted to find other dentists who were Mormon, faithful Mormons. So I started looking online. And I found like 4 or 5, and I started a little like Yahoo group where we would talk to each other. We were either already dentists, or we were dental students or pre-dental students. There weren't very many of us back then. This was 20 years ago. And this is a little known fact. I am the first and only Mormon woman from my state to have ever graduated from my state's dental school. Can you believe that? Even now, 20 years later, there aren't any other Mormon girls going. And that's despite the fact that every year that dental school graduates 10 to 12 Mormons. And sometimes women, but usually the women are from the West, where there's a lot more Mormons. You know, you might get a smattering each year, 1 or 2, or in the whole school, there might be 1 or 2. But I'm the only one from my state who's ever done that. Anyway, though, going back to this growing cognitive dissonance, where I saw that the women were not being treated fairly, and I went online because I wanted to be at peace about it. I wanted to find a writer or a quote from someone up at the top that fully explained to me that I was okay, that it was actually fair, that I was looking at it wrong, or that it was okay for me to be a professional. I was looking for a resolution in that dissonance. And what happened was I started coming across a lot more fringe places within Mormonism. For example, I found the blog Feminist Mormon Housewives. It's a great name. And through the blog, I discovered more kind of fringy, out on the edge of the approved materials. Usually within Mormonism, you only look at the approved, the scriptures, the church magazines, the instruction manuals, anything written by the higher ups. You're really encouraged to stay away from anything that might not be 100% faithful. But in my search for some better, deeper knowledge, I started looking at stuff like Mormon Stories podcast with John DeLynn and other kind of not approved stuff. And what happened was, once I started looking at that stuff, I learned about the real facts of the Mormon history, including some of that stuff that I mentioned in my earlier episodes about polygamy, and Joseph Smith taking advantage of young girls who lived in his home and taking them out to the barn, or marrying them without his first wife's knowledge or consent. And when I learned about the polygamy, everything came together for me in an instant. Once I learned that he was dishonest about that, and that there was this double standard, I knew right there, sitting in front of my computer in the middle of the night, I knew that the entire thing was made up. And it was such a relief. It was such a relief to have something so simple be the answer to something that I'd been questioning for years. And so I came to my husband and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't believe this anymore. And that's a big crushing piece of news to get for a Mormon, because you learn that you're going to heaven together as a couple, right? But he, at the time that I graduated, he got deployed, and he went and he studied the information that I gave him. And by the time he was home from his deployment, I was already a dentist. I'd already bought my practice, and he didn't believe in the Mormon church either. And when he came home, we resigned as a family together. Also, though, when he came home, we learned that our marriage was still terrible, but now there was a different context, because now I didn't have to worry that I had to find myself another Mormon man. I could be on my own. I could find another man. Of course, it never occurred to me that maybe I would prefer a woman, but that's neither here nor there. All of a sudden, I had options, and I could provide for myself too. So I was finally, after being married for 10 years, I was finally in a position where I could make my own bacon. I didn't need his money. And so it was only a matter of a few short months before things really fell apart and we decided to get divorced. And that is where I am going to leave you today. I hope I remembered everything. I think I did. Yeah. So I promise, because I really haven't talked about being gay very much yet, have I? I am going to get to it soon. It's just that all this background stuff really helps you understand the compulsory heterosexuality and why I didn't see it for so long. So we're going to get to that soon. And remember that you can reach out to me with questions or comments or even topic requests using my website, laurathelesbianexmormon.com, or you can find me on TikTok, also Laura the Lesbian Ex Mormon. We're having fun conversations over there. So definitely join us. We have a lot of fun over there. And thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.